What's happening, guys? This is the Litmus Podcast with me, Swarzy Macaly, and my partner in crime, the real Ben Hurst, isn't here today, but today is all about an exclusive interview with the one and only Dotun Adebayo to talk about saving his show, Dotun On Sunday, and also the theme is standing up for yourself. There's too many gems. Make sure you lock in. This is the Litmus Podcast with me, Swarzy Macaly, and the one and only, the legend in the game, the one when I think of Black British culture, I think of his name is Dotun Adebayo.
What an introduction.
Yeah, I know, you have to have one.
I'm like David Ginola. I am worth it.
What?
I'm worth it.
What?
I'm worth it.
You're worth it.
Your generation don't know David Ginola.
I don't know bad jokes, that's what I don't know.
No, it's a good one actually, because he was worth it, according to L'Oreal. He had great hair.
Because I'm worth it.
Yeah, of course, exactly. He is. So I am worth it. He did it in French, so it wasn't quite worth it.
Is that the French accent that you got going on there?
Yeah, it was actually. Je parle français comme toi.
Did you learn that at university?
Yeah, I did actually. Mais tu parles un peu français aussi, oui?
Oui, un peu.
Oui, comme les Martiniques.
Les Martiniques.
Non, c'est pas les Martiniques. Tu n'es pas.
Je parle en français, mais un peu.
Un peu.
Un
oui,
peu. Ouais.
Je sais.
I know. He's absolutely. He's kicked it off. This is the Litmus Podcast, and I'm very, very excited and very proud to have Dotun in the house. And I think we've been in touch now maybe 2 years.
Indeed, yeah. Just a little bit over that, maybe.
Yeah. So Dotun was very kind to ask me to come onto your show and talk about volunteering for Grenfell. That's where we first touched base. And so we were in Notting Hill Methodist Church, and that was the first time we had like rice and peas and plantain and talking about carnival and Grenfell all at the same time.
Do you know that food was because of me? They wouldn't have had that.
Of course it was because of you.
Of course.
Yeah.
They were thinking of supplying us with hot dogs and chips.
Really?
And I said,
for the guests that you had?
I don't think so.
I don't think that's going to run.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Did you see that half of the guests took half the food home with them?
Well, you have to. You can't let that food go to waste.
No, of course. It was nice. Actually.
Yeah.
It was nice.
It was very
sad
nice.
Sad occasion, obviously.
Yeah, very sad occasion. Talking about Grenfell, coming up to 2 years now, and so that conversation was around carnival, and then you've been kind enough to let me come onto your up all night conversations as well.
Kind enough.
Generation gap, where I school him every third Sunday of the month.
Not sure about
that. Isn't that true?
I'm not sure about that.
I come up with the best lines, the outtakes.
If I had your youth and you had my wisdom,
there we go.
What a wonderful world it would be.
Well, you've got youth, man. You've got youth. You've got Instagram. It's all right.
And that is youth with an F, isn't it?
Double F.
Yeah,
double
right.
F.
So she got an A in English A level. She got an A in English A level. She spells youth with an F, yeah?
2 Fs, actually. 2 Fs.
Well, at least 1 F. 1 F was bad enough.
So we've got Dotun in the house. He's a legend in the game. And so I have to bring you on because I want to be talking to you about standing up for yourself. That is the main theme of today. And so, Dotun, you are a presenter over at the BBC. You are on Dotun On Sunday over at the BBC Radio London. He's been up all night for several nights. How long have you been doing that show?
Gosh, I've been doing that show for 18 years now, and I'm feeling it. Yeah, 18 years.
Up all night.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So you were in, I was going to say short trousers, but
yeah, probably. I might have been in a baby grow during the time.
That's what I was thinking of.
I would have been keeping my parents up all night, but not for your reasons that you're on radio, not at all. You're the founder of the publishing company Express. He's spoken to Idris Elba.
Of course.
Idris
Elba paid me a lot of money, by the way. I'm very grateful to you, Idris.
What does he smell like? Because I remember you telling me a story.
Well, this is what the ladies said.
Oh, right.
I don't go around smelling men, but the ladies in the house said he smelt fragrant. I think is the word they used.
Okay.
Very
Are you jealous?
Fragrant. I always smell fragrance, Swaz. Why would I be jealous?
I don't know if you smell like Idris Elba, though.
Yeah, well,
I mean, that is like the pinnacle of maybe just fragrance.
That is like saying to one fish, you don't quite smell like the other fish.
No, but if you smell like Idris Elba, I think
if you smell fishy, that's good enough, isn't it?
Yeah, it might be. And you are my favourite radio presenter. I think you've taught me the most if I think about my radio journey.
No.
And, I haven't been in radio long, and take this as a compliment, honestly as a compliment. I do find it quite amazing to be on radio at the same time as you. Not time relatively like real time, but to say that I've been on radio in the same year or years that you have been, you're a legend, you know. So to share years with you, like broadcasting, is actually quite a thing. And I know lots of my friends will always be tuning in. And so coming out to standing up for yourself, I think it came as quite a shock when that tweet from the BBC came out. And you know what, for the context of the show, let me read it. So BBC Radio London tweeted this. There have been reports BBC Radio London's Sunday evening show looking at issues in London's black community is ending. That is incorrect. Dotun Adebayo is stepping down as a presenter, but the programme is continuing. And then Dotun's response came out and said this. Just to clarify, this statement is incorrect. At no time have I stepped down from my role presenting the BBC's only black political debate programme. It was axed. So of course, on top of support and on top of outrage, people flocked to the conversation. There were many reports, you know, the Voice newspaper to online platforms everywhere, because you are so loved when we talk about radio, and especially when we talk about the black British culture. And so a petition just boomed and loads of people signed. You got thousands of signatures, and then of course the BBC had to reverse the decision, and here you are, still loud and very, very clear on BBC Radio London. And so we just want to say, everyone who's listening, just my friends and people who listen to your show, thank you for the many years of broadcasting, of many conversations, of all of the narratives that you have had and also changed along the way. And you'll be pleased to know this. You know how I found out? I didn't even find out that tweet on Twitter. It was my mum, who's not even on Twitter. She dropped it into the family chat and she was like, Swaz, is this your Dotun? And I was like, listen, there's only one Dotun when it comes to radio. So yeah, I just want to say thank you. I love you dearly. And
I love you too, you know that. And I'm humbled actually, because I wasn't expecting the response from both the community, and we've got to say politicians as well, because David Lammy started he wrote a letter which he got 30 other MPs to sign, which he then sent to the Director General of the BBC, Lord Tony Hall. I think a combination of that grassroots support and the leadership, if you like, if you want to call it that way, together reversed, although the BBC would say it's been a misunderstanding, but got them to think again about their decision to not have me continue presenting the programme that I presented for 20 years. Yeah. And I'm saying that as politely and diplomatically as I can. Yeah.
But why would you not expect the support? I mean, I did an exhibition last year to celebrate Black History Month, and me and about 20 young people, we just bombarded you on your show. And I just thought, well, if there's one place I need to go, not just for the listenership, but just for the support and the coverage and the good conversation, then of course I'm going to your show on a Sunday evening. And you doing that show for 20 years, why would you, is that humility, or I don't know, because of course people are going to come out and feel what you feel stolen from. You feel like you can't take our Dotun away. What do you mean? That's years worth of just listening to your voice. So were you honestly surprised when people came out?
Of course, yeah, because when you're on radio, there is a disconnect between you and your listeners. You don't get an immediate sense. Okay, you get people calling up, you get people texting or emailing. Every now and then you get people recognizing your voice when you're sitting with your family having a Sunday dinner at a restaurant, or more likely a couple of sandwiches in a hamburger restaurant. But anyway, that's one side. No, you do get that, but you don't get a real sense. It's not like when you're on TV that people recognize you everywhere, and that because they recognize your face, you become more part of the family. When it's your voice, it's a different kind of connection, I think. And obviously the content of your program, you mentioned when you stormed my studios with about 20 other creatives. Actually, you looked at it like you were storming our studio, whereas I look at it as, what a great story. Let's bring all these people in, you know. And what we're about on radio is trying to make great creative content that keeps people listening. You don't need my face in there. You need my voice to pull it all together, but you don't need my face there. It's somewhat distracting. Not because I'm not a handsome dude, but because, face gives you another level of engagement and it slightly distracts from the content, So you don't always know. I mean, my missus, every now and then, she'll say to me, yeah, you think I'm not listening, don't you? Because, you're talking like that about me on air. I'm like, oh my goodness, she listens. So, you don't have the immediate connection and you don't always know that you're loved, beloved. You never know that you're beloved like that, because you shouldn't have to go through what I went through. You shouldn't have to go through that. I went through, I would say, 2 weeks of hell because I never asked to be the news, and it's an uncomfortable position to be the news when all you want to do is present the news. That's what my job is, to present the news, not to be the news. When you are the news, it's a totally different experience. It's not one that I'm very comfortable with. Yeah,
and for us sitting back and looking at it just from the timeline perspective and just thinking, what on earth is going on here? Because the story just kind of unraveled that the show had been axed. There wasn't a replacement or there wasn't a substitute show, and it wasn't quite clear. And I think people within the community are just like, oh, here we go again. There's another cycle of this. So when you say, you didn't expect the people to have the support, that's one thing. But also, did that take you by shock? Had you had a conversation beforehand, or your response? I think a lot of people cheered. A lot of people cheered for many reasons, and for me, it was like, wow. In our generation, Dotun, we call it a clapback. So
I like that.
if you hear shade and someone throws shade your way and you clap back real quick, it's almost like, yes, I got their in. So a lot of us are like, rah, look at the clapback. Look how but it was polite. It wasn't rude. It was diplomatic, and you did it in such a way that no one could point any fingers. But were you surprised, or from looking on, it just looked like, one of us have been mistreated, and so I think a lot of us carry that burden because a lot of us feel like that sometimes at work.
I felt very down at the time. It's funny when you think too deeply about these things, you don't respond in the right way. I wrote a response to what somebody had sent me and said, look, the BBC is saying this, and I wrote that response within about 30 seconds.
Wow, okay.
I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
I wrote the response and I wrote it in a measured way, partly because I've been at the BBC for 45 years. Not all the way through that time. I started at the BBC when I was 12 years old because I loved radio and I wanted to be on radio, and I got the opportunity to come in and help out at weekends and my holidays. That's what I did. I am a supporter of the BBC. The BBC is a corporation which I've had many occasions to realise how important it is for us all as a nation. So on the one hand, you don't want to criticise the BBC, and the unfortunate thing is when you're a huge corporation like that, any criticism is quite sensitive because people can use that to dismiss or to diss the whole corporation. Remember, there are thousands of other people who are dependent for their jobs and their livelihoods on the BBC, not to talk of the millions of people who are so dependent on the quality of broadcasting of the BBC. The other night I was on air, it was a politics phone in, and somebody called up and he said, yeah, you BBC lot, you're all anti-Trump. And I'm like, okay, show me the evidence of that. You're never balanced, blah, blah. And I said, yes, show me the evidence of that. He said, I don't need to show you the evidence. You can, and I'm saying, just look, if you're criticising, show me the evidence. I'm allowing you to come on the programme now. It's not allowing, you call up the phone line, but I could always say, look, let's move on the conversation, because you're actually not talking about the subject we were talking about, which is American politics generally. Wasn't about Donald Trump. And although you can't escape that, I get that nowadays with American politics. But the point I was trying to make was, you've taken up an issue about the BBC, whereas we were talking generally about Americana here. And he was saying that, I don't need to show you the evidence. And I said, no, come on, you can't just come on and criticise BBC.
Make a sweeping statement.
Without showing us one bit of evidence.
Sure, yeah.
Sure, come on. And he said, right, I can see I've riled you now. I'm like, what is this? It's not about me. Just come on, look, if you show some evidence, we'll argue it. Then all he could come up with were, what about Michelle Obama when she wrote her book? You covered that. And I'm like, well, it was the biggest selling book in the entire world when it was released, becoming Michelle Obama. Not only that, how many times as a former First Lady of the United States published a book? It's a big story. That's why we covered it. I mean, her husband wasn't even in power then, so it wasn't
regardless of the politics.
Yeah, exactly. So the point I'm trying to make is there are enough people out there to diss the BBC. I don't want to be part of that. No, not at all. Not in a million years will I ever diss the BBC. So I didn't think that deeply about it, but my response shows my reluctance to diss the BBC as much as it shows my insistence to clarify the position and to vindicate myself, if you like. Yeah,
and I think you make a really good point there. When stories like that come about and it involves a corporation, you can't fight a title name, because behind that name there are loads of people who think loads of different things, and it isn't one person that you're usually battling. So of course you can't diss an entire corporation. You're usually talking about one or two people. But when you see the petition come out and the signatures and the politicians get involved, to me it sparked feelings of like when I read Martin Luther King and when I read, what was going on during the 60s and that wave of activism, to be honest with you, I do think this will go down in my memory as history. This is like when the people are upset
united
about something.
Well.
Yeah, I get really excited about that, because I've always believed there's strength in people, and I've always believed that when people come together, amazing things can happen. So imagine if that didn't go ahead. Not to say that you wouldn't get your show back, but when I see injustice, and however people want to hear that word and take it loosely or lightly, but that to me was an injustice. There was no reason for what was going on. People were upset about, and they came together, and the victory of that is celebrated, where we get to have our Dotun Adebayo on a Sunday forever and ever and ever. So I don't know, does that spark the same feeling for you? Does that look like activism to you? Because you're in the heart of it. But me looking at it, I'm like, yeah, I signed something and I feel like part of that victory story. So I don't know, did it spark feelings of activism for you?
Well, I didn't see it as a victory. I don't see it as a victory. Okay. And I think that is slightly the wrong way to look at it. And in fact, I can show you how I've lost out as a result of that, but I'm saying that's neither here nor there, because it's not about me.
Yeah.
But if you take it further and you think it's about all the black programs that the BBC puts out in every jurisdiction where there is a large black community, whether that be in Luton or it's in Manchester or Birmingham or Nottingham or Sheffield or Liverpool, there are equivalent black programs.
Yeah.
So if you juxtapose what was happening in London across the country, or what they argue it was a misunderstanding, but nevertheless, if the threat was there across the country, then that's a much bigger issue. And the black community needs to fight for what it feels is important.
Right.
If they don't feel it's important, for example, if nobody had come out to support or to argue that my program should continue as it was, then what can I do? I have to accept that it's not important to people, and we shouldn't be being active. We shouldn't protest about things that we don't care about.
Right.
Let's protest about the important things. The black community arguably was cut out of the Brexit conversation. It's not that Brexit doesn't matter to us, but the way the Brexit has been argued and debated, apart from Gina Miller, who was the person that put the Brexit debate back into Parliament and has caused all sorts of trouble as a result of that, which shows that it is something that concerns us. But apart from that, you rarely see black people involved or being given the opportunity to engage in that debate. So it wasn't surprising to me when Jon Snow looked out across Parliament Square on March the 29th, the day that we were supposed to leave the European Union, and said, I've never seen so many white people gathered together in the heart of London, which is, of course, a multicultural city. He had a very good point. Even I also was, you know, once he said it, I was like, rah! I've never seen that many white people all together in Parliament Square. Hardly any black people there, if there were any. And he had a point. Do you know? And it matters to us, but if we're cut out of the debate of it, it's like if there is a black program, quote unquote black program, because that can mean many things, but if there is a black program and black people are cut out of it, so the subject matter is not necessarily black, or it's not aimed at a black community, well, they're not going to be that bothered about it. You know, it's not that black issues don't matter to us. There is, but you've cut us out of the conversation. Or if you've decided to make a decision about a black program and you're not engaging with the community as well, they'll be riled up, because if it matters to them, they'll be riled up. Does that make sense? Yeah,
no, it does. And I think it touches nicely back to the topic of this Litmus. So the Litmus podcast is all about throwing in questions and statements into a group of people. He's in trouble now, you see. To get different reactions, different opinions. And so on the topic of speaking up for yourself, which I think you did, and a lot of people are inspired about it, this is my Litmus for today. So when it comes to our careers, because this Litmus can span across all different topics, so let's just narrow it for now down to our careers. When do I shut up, put up, and speak up?
Wow. Wow.
See, I got good questions.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
So when it comes to our careers, when do we shut up, put up, and speak up? And the way I've because I don't want people to assume that getting to the point of speaking up is anyhow easy. We know that isn't true. We know that speaking up comes with a cost and with a price that sometimes we can't afford. And so I think those are the three sort of pit stops along that journey to speaking up. I think there's a lot of time where I'll just shut up because maybe one, I don't know what to say. You know, sometimes when people bowl you over with comments and you're like, I thought in that moment I would know what to say. And then when it happens, you're like, I'm so surprised that someone's even said that. I don't even know what my clapback would be, right? So I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to shut up. But also you shut up because you know that a job might be at stake, or a colleague or a family member or something precious to you is going to have to give if you do speak up. So that's one stage. The put up with it, I think the put up is double. I think, you know, sometimes you put up with things, one, for comfortability. You enter a new job and the way things are the way things are. And you kind of have to be a bit accepting of it because you're the newbie and you can't be going around changing things up. So you put up with things. But interestingly, when I was thinking about it and thinking about the bus boycott and during civil rights, you know, people put up with walking to work because they didn't want to ride the buses. And that was a hard slog. So they were putting up with things that ultimately would lead to the positive change they wanted to see. But don't get it twisted, it was still difficult during that time. And then speaking up, of course, you speak up. And then in your case, I suppose, people speak up and people come together to say the same thing. So, yeah, I want to know, especially as a young person at the beginning of my career, how do I distinguish those three? And should I never shut up? Should I always put up? Should I never speak up? Should I always speak up? What do you think about that?
Well, you've got a great question there. If it wasn't three questions, let's assume it's one question. Great question. I've got a fantastic reply.
Yeah.
So when I was first informed that my services were no longer required for the Sunday programme as it was, I'm saying, look, the BBC says it was a misunderstanding, so I'll accept that. But anyway, my resumption after a conversation was that my services would be terminated with regards to that. I got home and I told my wife, and my wife said, Dotun, know your worth. Know your worth. And it resonated. When you know the value of what you have to offer, can you imagine me being somewhat demoralized and somebody says, you're worth more than that? It's their loss, not yours. So you start off, wherever you start off in your career, know your worth. And your worth can go up and it can go down. I get that. But know your worth. When you know your worth, you're literally not worth less. Yeah?
Yeah.
So you shut up when your worth is not up to the worth of what either you're being asked to do. For example, you're learning.
Yeah.
So you know that I am worth, you're always worth something. But when you're learning, like you're learning to drive a car, well, I'm sorry, you may think you know how to drive your car, but you haven't passed your license.
Yeah.
You haven't passed your test. So listen to the person who's trying to show you a way to pass your test. So you got to shut up. You got to shut up. It doesn't mean you need to put up, because you should never put up with something that you're not happy with. But like you said, the analogy of the civil rights movement, you will put up with something to get to your goals, but you don't put up with whatever. You don't put up with getting your head beaten with billy clubs, as they call it in the United States during the civil rights movement, or being attacked by Alsatian dogs, for example. You don't put up with that. You put up with walking to work because you don't want to embolden and enrich the people who are saying that you are worth less on this bus. So you put up with it to stop them, to impoverish them. And what happened in Birmingham, Alabama, was that the bus boycott that started by Rosa Parks, what happened there was that the bus company found that they could not survive without the economy. And it happened here in the UK as well. There's a man called Paul Stevenson who's now in his 80s. He's not in the best of health anymore, but people should pay homage to him.
Of course.
If not, go on a literal pilgrimage to his door, because Paul Stevenson is the British Rosa Parks. He started a bus boycott of the bus company in Bristol in the early 1960s, because they were being racist there in terms of employment and otherwise. And again, it succeeded. So he knew his worth and the worth of other people, and it's a human issue. This is a human rights issue here. And it's an existential issue. I grant that, but existentialism is a humanism. So you know your worth, first of all. You know your worth to be able to shut up, to be able to put up if you have to, but don't put up with anything. Stand up. Bob Marley told us, gotta get up and stand up for your rights. So that's when you stand up, when your rights are not being given to you, then you stand up.
Okay, so say for example, someone young in the game, because I put this out on socials and loads of people just messaged, and I think a good point someone made was, I don't feel old enough to speak up because the people I work with are older than me, and I feel lost as a young person, trying to be heard over the voices of people who've been in the game longer than I have, and look at me like, what do you know? Like, what have you got to say about this? And the way things here are in this company and the culture is so long in the tooth that you're just gonna have to ride it out until you get to where I am. But what would you say to that young person? Because is there an age thing when we talk about speaking up? I don't think there is, personally, but I do get the sense of, even me, like working with people who are older than me, you feel like, okay, I need to respect you, but how can I respect something that is wrong? And therefore, how can I then be silent because what I think is the right thing, but I'm outnumbered here, especially when I'm outnumbered by folk who are older than me as well. So, yeah, I can know my worth, but when it challenges people who are older, How does that work?
Well, the most powerful advocate for climate change in the world at the moment is a 16-year-old Swedish girl called Greta Thunberg. Remember that. She's the most powerful advocate of climate change in the entire planet today. So I dare anybody say to her she's not old enough, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Oh no, she's read up, she knows, she's clued in as to what needs to be done in this planet. Some of it is actually so basic that you wonder how foolish older people, much wiser people might be. It doesn't make sense. Having said that, I wish my daughters would ever listen to an older, wiser voice in the house, you know, the one that was partly responsible for bringing them into life, etc. But isn't it funny that we wouldn't take that from our parents nowadays, but we take it in the workplace? Any workplace that doesn't listen to the vibrant voice of youth is shooting itself in the foot. The reason you're there is to provide the energy of youth. It's not to keep quiet. Which company would turn around and say, you keep quiet, you know, you don't know what you're talking about? No, there might be issues that, hang on, yeah, good idea, but we can't really work that way. But it shouldn't stop you from talking. If you're talking, if you're not talking, or if you're being told to keep quiet or not being encouraged to speak up to help the company, then the company doesn't value you. They don't know your worth. And either you've got to say to them, you're crazy, I'm trying to help you out here. I'm trying to show every company you work for, the bottom line is make us some money. If you go to the company and say, look, you're making 100 million quid a year now, but I can increase that to 120 million quid, which company is going to tell you to shut up? You know your place. This ain't the Victorian days, you know, it doesn't work like that anymore. And in fact, there's more. You always laugh that I don't know how to switch off my mobile phone. And,
no, I don't. Who said that?
You said it just before we started this podcast.
Because it took an hour to close his phone.
Well, it doesn't matter. But the point is, I know why you're here now. I know your worth. You know? Don't get me wrong.
But what if you know your worth and you're still like, I'm shook to lose my job? Because some people are in that situation, and some people are thinking, okay, if I say anything, then I could just get cut because there's a queue of people waiting to jump into my spot. And so I think it's courageous to speak up, but what do you say to the person who's like, oh, I've got bills to pay?
Why would somebody sack you, first of all, for trying to do something positive? If you told me, look, something ain't right about my company, whether it's painful, whether it's me, I could be the person that's not right in the way that I treat.
You don't want to hear that though.
Well, actually, sometimes I need to hear it, whether I want to hear it or not. We need to treat each other as fellow human beings in the workplace.
Agreed.
But the most important thing, remember when my wife said to me, know your worth, we've still got a mortgage to pay. And that if my worth is so much so that I'm prepared to speak up against my employers, if that's the case, I'm risking all of that. But you know what? I'll tell you the funny thing about business, the workplace. When you know your worth, you know it's their loss. So you go into the workplace without fear. If they know, okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. If they know that they can dangle a carrot in front of you, which is your job and your money, the power is always with them. If they can't dangle that, if you say, look, like I've been in a situation, and I'll tell you this for true, you can work out in which company I was working for or otherwise.
We'll play this game.
Work that one out for yourself, where somebody has said to me, look, here's the situation. I'll tell you what, if you agree to this situation, you accept this situation, I will offer you this extra work and better work. And I said, no. I said, if that's the situation, you better find somebody else, because I ain't playing that. So I lost out, but then that person now knows, oh, you can't get him like that. You can't dangle money in front of him, because it's not that he doesn't need money, but he's not motivated by it.
Right.
Yeah. If you see what I mean, once you take out the power, all business, all social engagement is a power play. You know, whether you're going to the clinic to get a checkup or not, somebody has the power in that relationship, and they can use it for better or worse. But once you're able to take out their value from them, their power, and then what harm can they do you?
Yeah, it's really funny you say that. You know, I got asked to do host an event, and the top line of this event was diversity and inclusion. So I said, yeah, of course, would love to do it. Great cause, great conversation. Yeah, no problem. I said, oh, what's the hosting fee? And this is another thing, right? People often will ask you to do a job. They'll send you the email in all confidence and not put what the fee is. So either you think I'm going to do it for free, or diversity and inclusion can't be that top of the agenda if there's no money behind it. So I said, you know, what's the fee for it? Politely. And they said, oh, there's no fee. So I said, oh, well, I'm sorry, but I won't be able to do it. And it was sad, because that was an event I really wanted to do, and it's got a great cause behind it. But I thought, hold on a minute, me doing that only upholds your idea that we don't need to pay into this agenda because people will do it for free. And then someone else is like, oh, Swarzy, you should have just done it because it's a foot in the door. And I'm like, but how many feet do we need in the door before we start getting paid? And the joke was, when I pushed them, they then had miracle money out of nowhere to pay me for the event. But when I spoke to the other people, the photographer, the runners, they said, oh, you know what, I wish I was getting paid for this. And I didn't realize that the content that this event was creating was done for free. And it made me so sad to look at people who, you know, from the black community in particular, where the shift was a lot of people on the panel were not from people from backgrounds where you'd think diversity and inclusion, you need to have their say first. But it really made me sad that this event is going to come away looking fabulous, and the people running it and putting it all together weren't going home with money in their pockets. And when that person said, oh, just do it for free, it really eggs me sometimes, because and when you say that as well, you then look like, oh, you think you're the big shot now, you don't have to work for free anymore. And so constantly this is a conversation within my WhatsApp group of, oh, when do you do things for free, and when do you do other jobs not for free to prove the point? And if proving the point means walking away like you did, that's how the cookie crumbles, and it's a hard one to call. So yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, by the way, how much you paid me for this podcast?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, right. Now let's hold on.
Paying you in GCSEs. Don't worry, man.
Hold on. It is, no, of course, I'll come in to be a guest on your podcast anytime. I don't expect to get paid. You're not making money from it. And apart from anything else, it's about respect. I respect you and you respect me. So I'll respect you enough to offer my services to you. You respect me enough to say to me, well, look, there's no money in it. Okay, that letter that you got asking you to host it, they should have been straight up from the very beginning and say, look, let me start off by saying we don't have any money. We don't have any money. We'd love you to host this thing. So at least you're put in the position where it's straight. It's straight from the very beginning. And you can always ask, okay, you don't have any money. Are you getting paid for it? Are you getting paid? Because it's not about, I'm happy to do things for nothing. If there's no money, there's no money. I accept that. And it's not about whether you have your job anyway and this is just an additional thing, so you'll be getting your salary anyway. But if you've got a specific project, if you've gone and got funding for a project, or you've got sponsorship for a project and it's £1,000, well, why didn't you make provision to make it £1,050 so that you could respect those people who you're asking to do something for nothing? It's about respecting each other as fellow human beings now. We all have bills to pay. We all have bills to pay. It's not that we can't do things for free. Yeah, do things for free, but make sure that you're not getting paid either. Say to them, even I'm not getting paid for this. I'm doing it for free because I believe in it, and I think you believe in this kind of thing as well. Well,
let's work together and make it happen.
Exactly. Let's do it.
And I think even the step further would be, oh, you're getting paid. Are you willing to get paid £50 less so that you can pay the people? No, because I think that's
dark, man. I love that.
When I do an event and I'm getting paid, and I think, oh, I need someone to come alongside. That's not even a question, because the return isn't the money. The return is the content. The return is the respect of that individual to say, oh, the next time I have something going on, of course I'm going to come through with you. But if no one's getting paid, then no one's getting paid. But if someone is...
Isn't it funny that we're literally talking about 50 quid, which ain't nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Which ain't nothing. Yeah. But it shows respect.
Yeah, exactly.
If they said 30 quid, I thought, well, at least you're showing some respect that, I might have a babysitter to pay or whatever it is, or I might have some transport costs to get to, whatever it can be. But I didn't realise I could learn anything from a younger like yourself, Charles. Honestly,
save it for 5 Live. That will be the next one.
Well, I promise you, if anybody ever asks me to do anything for free, I'm going to say, can I have 50 quid of your fee? And that'll make it easy.
I'm not saying it'll make it easy, but I'm saying usually the big guns are getting big money. And, what's 50 quid to a big gun?
How can it be that I've learned something from a younger like yourself?
2 things you've learned now.
What else have I learned?
What? You just learned that the question was a good question that I threw at you.
No, I didn't learn that. I was just acknowledging it was a half-decent question.
Half-decent.
But the only thing I've learned from you, forgive me, is that if somebody asks me to do something for nothing, I'll ask them for 50 quid of their fee.
Well, you got to speak up. You got to speak up for that.
What was the point of asking me to come in here when you're going to school me?
No, I'm not schooling you.
No, you are actually.
That is the litmus.
Only a tiny little bit.
Just a little bit. You're going to take that home. Bit.
Yeah, of course I'm taking it. I'm going to take it with me everywhere I go. Are you kidding? Let's say that to my missus next time. Okay.
No.
Okay. I'm going to give you.
She's got much more wisdom than me. Know your worth was a big gem.
I'm going to give you love, but you have to give me a little bit of the love that you got, and then I'll be happy to give you some love.
I don't even know if you're schooling me up right now. I don't even know if you're
I am schooling you.
Who knows?
You schooled me.
Who knows?
It's all love, girl.
It's all love, man. Okay, I need to wrap this up. I could be talking to you forever. But that is the litmus, and I wonder, okay, let's take those 3 parts again. So when do I shut up, put up, and speak up? For a younger audience listening, trying to make their way into whatever industry, creative, non-creative, however you want to look at it. For yourself, looking back at your younger self, what advice would you give?
It's a good question.
For a younger Dotun?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure this incident with the BBC that happened recently isn't the first, and it may not be the last. Especially, this isn't just about racism, because there will be so many different issues that will crop up, and issues that people will face that I won't face, and vice versa. But in the scale of career, because everyone wants to have a career, everyone wants to have a popping career as well. So what advice would you give to your younger self to wrap up this episode when it comes to knowing when to shut up, put up, and speak up?
I'll be real. And this is not, you're absolutely right to say it's not just about racism. It's also very much about sexism. I wish I could give this advice to my younger daughters. Rather, I wish they would listen to this advice from me. I'll definitely give them to it. And also about a lot of other people who aren't necessarily confident in life. When you start off in the workplace, you don't have the confidence that you have because you're stepping out of your comfort zone. You're moving into an environment that you're not familiar with, and you don't necessarily know the ways to get around that. And that's why often enough you put up with stuff and you shut up and you take it. My advice to my younger self would have been, you should save up every single penny that you can in your life, and even more than that, and work 2 or 3 jobs so that your main gig, you don't have to depend on it. So when you save up every single penny and you got your own little crib somewhere, it takes out 90% of why you have to work to maintain a roof over your head. Takes that out. And if you take that out and you're not as dependent upon a salary being fed to you every day, then you can stand up and you can also, you can put up if you want, but you can certainly stand up for yourself a lot more. And you can take the risk of thinking, I know my worth. If you don't appreciate it, I'll go somewhere else, because you're not always chasing your tail. You're not always trying to sort of just make ends meet and pay your bills. If you can take that part of the equation out, then you're nearly there. The other thing I would say is, well, like I said, know your worth. Know your worth. All those two things go together. Know your worth, but your worth is much greater when you don't have to chase the money. Don't chase the money. Chase what you know is your goal, your plan, your vision, what you are, who you are. Yeah.
And I think in your case as well.
And don't waste time. Don't waste time. Don't waste time.
How do people waste time?
We waste time by primarily by not fixing our eyes on the prize. So if my goal is to be the best radio broadcaster in the world, what am I doing watching television? It might inform it can, but you got to question, shouldn't you be spending time listening to the radio all the time? Because that's the game you're in. Yeah.
And I think as well, to your younger self, how amazing would it be to know that growing up and getting to the position where you're in, you would have the respect, the love, the support of so many people who would back you and speak on your behalf. And I think that goes towards the conversation of what you chase. So if you are knowing your worth and you're confident in who you are, then when a mistake like that happens, or a misunderstanding like that happens, it's very clear from the outside looking in, well, hold on a minute, this person's good at their job. Why are they not in that position? Who's made that call? There's something funky about all of this going on. And I think that's to do with integrity. I think that's to do with, paying attention to your craft, not watching telly if you could be doing something else that is more beneficial to your role. But yeah, I find it fascinating, isn't it? That when you are good at what you do and you put the hours in, jobs just seem to come your way because people recognise that's what you're good at.
There's somebody who will always recognise that. Just very quickly, I just remembered. Okay, I told you earlier that I started at the BBC at the age of 12. I took the 171 bus from Tottenham to Bush House, which is in the Aldwych. That was where the World Service was in those days. I had a contact from my father who used to do freelance work for them, and I went there and I said, look, I'd really like to be involved in that. So to that younger self who was trying to be a broadcaster, very young, fair enough, but at a time when England didn't necessarily, or Britain didn't necessarily want me or a black person to speak for it, I would say, and not just in racial terms, in terms of gender politics, in terms of sexual politics, in terms of disability politics, I would say to my younger self, the world ain't always going to be like this. Yeah, it ain't always going to be like this. Get yourself prepared for when it changes.
Yeah.
Get yourself ready.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I don't know if that makes me happy or sad.
No, it's a positive. I hope we're going to end this podcast on a positive note.
Yeah, no, we are.
Don't drag me down to, wherever you want to go down.
No, I think that's so true. That, the way that the world is set up now, or radio that's set up now, or TV, or whatever industry I'm going to go into, it's true. It won't be the same. And as robust as I need to be now, like, for example, you do the show 20 more years, it isn't going to be the same climate that it is in now. So all the things that you learn, it's like, oh, wow, I'm going to have to look back and draw on that sort of experience.
The good news is that in 20 more years, you'll be grown up.
Yeah, so will you.
And
you won't be any funnier then.
I will. I'm sure I will. And I'll be able to hand over the baton to you.
Yeah. Okay, promise me that you'll be in the game for 20 more years.
Well, you promise me that you'll be prepared to take my low salary
And £50 out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Dotun Adebayo, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your wisdom, although it's really your wife's wisdom. But yeah, just because I think conversations like this, one, I'm passionate about them, but I need to listen back on a day that I get bad news, or I get, news of something where it rattles me, and I need to hear this again and think, oh yeah, Dotun said, know your worth, Swaz, and it will happen for all of us. There's a day coming when all of us will have a bad day at work.
If this podcast achieves its goal, then even one person will have more confidence when they're in the workplace. I generally hope. I mean, imagine me. Imagine little old 12-year-old me from Tottenham thinking that, wow, there'll be one person in the world who will achieve their dream, maybe because of what they've heard on this podcast. That's amazing, isn't it? Isn't that amazing?
Well, you've done it already with me, just by you tweeting back that response. No, seriously, because when I looked at it, I thought, you know what? That is guts. That is courage. That is bravery. And whether or not you felt that or not, that is how I received that. And so when, funnily enough, recent situations happened, I remember that thinking, he knew his worth. And that is so infectious to then now think, yeah, I need to know my worth, and I can't stand for things that are not right. And that spans into workplace, home, whatever it may be. And that is just me, Dotun. So think about all those people that you've got following you on the old Twitter there. But yeah, loads of people who are watching, who are listening, who are cheering you on. And I'm so glad that the people of the petition were so successful, because we need you on the radio and we need another 20 more years. So thank you so much for coming on the Litmus Podcast, second time round to grace us. So, he's a regular now.
We need Swarzy on the radio as well. Don't forget that as well, yeah?
I'm on the radio the same time as Dotun. That is legendary.
She got an A in English.
Yeah, he didn't even go to Cambridge. So it's fine. Don't worry about it.
She didn't even go to
Don't worry about it, sweetheart. It's a slur. Yeah, let's wrap it up while he's laughing, because then he won't cut me off. There you go, the Litmus Podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And we'll be giving you this episode very, very soon. Thanks, bye.
Yeah, you did catch me there. You caught me. I forgot. You've got a habit of doing that.